And at that point, I realized what had happened. I realized that all the pain in my back and my shoulders, the physical pain, was a result of my suppressed emotions. Hello. Okay, so many of us have some sort of origin story. This is a story that explains how we got started in doing what we're doing. Like, for example, if you're a climber, how did you get started in that? It may have been that your friend introduced you. If perhaps you're a tennis player, then you may have been introduced to the sport by your parents. Or if you're into self-improvement or personal development, you may have been going through a lot of pain to experience this. And I obviously talk about emotional release. This entire channel is about that because it has changed my life in the most amazing way. And so I knew that this was something that I wanted to share. I wanted to communicate with people. And I thought that people would really benefit just from listening to my experience and actually seeing what it's all about, because many of us actually don't really understand it. You can only really understand when you do the work yourself. So, where did I get started? Well, I want to take you back to, I think it was about 10 years ago. It was September, and I was in Poland with my family. Now, I come from Polish heritage, and at this point, usually I only ever go to Poland if there's a big event. And in this specific situation or circumstance, I found myself in church next to my family, or everyone was there, my uncles, my aunties, my grandparents, and they were all there. And my father was there as well. That day was the day of his funeral. And I remember being in church, and in Poland they sort of have an open casket, so you can see, the body. It's like the final way of saying goodbye. And I remember standing up in church and wanting desperately to cry, but there was a part of me that was so scared to do this because I thought I would be considered weak in doing so. I had been conditioned so much by my environment, by society, that you often hear men don't cry, and I really held that sort of stereotype. Basically, that I couldn't express my emotion because of fear of what my family would think. And you would think, out of all the places you could let go, a funeral would be one of them. But this wasn't the case for me. I was just so stuck in the old paradigm that I couldn't let go. So I held the emotion in. And this was even considering that at that point I had learnt about emotional release, at least studied it intellectually for about 4 years. And I had experienced various releases of emotion. But in this instant at the funeral, I still couldn't find the strength to do it. So fast forward 3 months and I find myself in a 10-day Vipassana meditation course. And this is the third time I've done this course. And I thought I was pretty good at it because I had done Qigong meditation up until that point. I think it was for about 6 years, maybe 4 years, maybe a little bit less. And this was my third course. So I thought, I'm going to go in the course. I just felt, it was a good time to do it. However, from the very beginning, I couldn't meditate. And when I say I couldn't meditate, what I'm actually saying is that my mind just could not be still. It was all over the place. It was, in Vipassana meditation, you're meant to spend the first, I think, 2 or 3 days looking at your breath, feeling your breath, observing your breath, going in and going out. But I just couldn't do this because my mind would wander so much. It would go on stories. It would think about, work. It would think about what was happening with my family, what was happening with my wife at the time. And for some reason, I was not able to do it. And I didn't understand why. And I got more and more frustrated as the week progressed, the 10 days progressed. But then eventually on the 7th day, I wake up, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, have my shower and go to my cubicle. Now, because I had done the meditation more than once, I was assigned a sort of cubicle for myself. So I could go in that cubicle and meditate. Now, the beginning session was meant to be a group session, but for some reason I decided I'm not going to do the group sessions, I'm just going to go sit in my cubicle. And almost immediately as I sit down, all of a sudden I get these thoughts about my father. I start thinking, oh my God, I wasn't there to help him. I could have helped him. I could have done so much more. I didn't really speak to him as much. There was times where I avoided him. And as I had these thoughts, all of a sudden this intense feeling of grief, shame, all of that comes up and I just break down and I'm there crying for, just pretty much through the meditation session, didn't eat breakfast, was just releasing all the tears. And I remember at one point I'm thinking to myself, there's something wrong with this because, I should be meditating. I should be, why am I crying? I didn't quite understand. There's a part of me that knew and there's a part of me that did understand, but my mind was trying to work things out intellectually. And so come lunchtime, I go to the teacher because at this point I'm ready to give up. I'm rubbish at meditation. I should be much better now because it's the 3rd time I've done this. So I go to my teacher and he has a hut right next door to the main meditation center. So I walk up the path, this grass, I can smell the nice country air. And but inside of me, I'm just all over the place. This contraction in my stomach. I'm just feeling just down, and and almost immediately as I walk through the door, I see him. He's sitting down. He gives me a big smile, and the waterworks come out. I burst into tears, and it takes me 2 or 3 minutes. Seemed like a long time to settle myself down and to actually be able to speak to him and tell him what was going on. And I start to explain, and all he does is just look at me and smile. And he says 3 words, or maybe more. It's good that it's come out. And I kind of understood what he meant. I understood the concept. I understood intellectually, but I didn't really get it. And it wasn't until the next day that I really did get what had actually happened to me. That day was a complete washout. I didn't even bother meditating. I just cried, and it was, I must have spent probably about 10 hours crying in total. But fast forward the next day, I'm there, back at my cubicle, and I sit down again. And I noticed something's different. The previous few days I had suffered from back pain, from shoulder pain, and it's really intense. However, this time the pain had gone. All the pain in my shoulders and back had disappeared. Literally, probably not all, probably about 95% of the pain had disappeared. And what I also noticed is that my mind was completely still. It was silent. I could take it to my breath and it would just stay there. It wouldn't go off on any stories. I wouldn't start talking. I wouldn't start thinking. It was such an immense peace that I felt. And at that point, I realized what had happened. I realized that all the pain in my back and my shoulders, the physical pain, was a result of my suppressed emotions. That I knew for certain. What I also knew for certain was that my mind, all the chattering in my mind was happening because of the suppressed feelings as well around my father's death. I had never fully released the emotion. I had, when I heard his death, but I hadn't fully released it. I thought I did, but I didn't. And there was actually an intense amount of grief and sadness around that. And that was when I realized how powerful our suppressed emotions are, and what actually happens when we suppress them, what happens in our mind, what happens in our bodies. And I knew at that point that this was something that I was going to be doing for, I don't know how long, but this was the tool, this was the technique, this was the path that I was going to be walking, because I was an emotional creature. I have always been an emotional person, as in, you know, I've been very sensitive, very empathic to other people's feelings, and this time, but I was very good at suppressing my emotions up until a point, because when I was younger, I would express my emotion. I would cry. It was very easy for me to cry as a boy, and I'd get teased for that. So I suppressed it, held it down, and basically stopped. But that meant that huge build-up of emotions inside of me. And I realized also at that point why many men as well find it so difficult to connect. I realized so many things about myself just from that one experience. And that happened about 10 years ago. And since then, I have had a number of sort of releases, emotional releases, where I've gradually changed my perspective about everything, about people in general, about my physical health, about energy, about how I see the world. And it's been quite a fascinating journey, and it all started from that point. And I think in the future, I think all of us are going to see how much we're holding on, because it's only when we let go of what we've been carrying that we will really see how much we have, how much weight has been on our shoulders. So I just wanted to share that story, because for me it was probably the most transformative experience that I had in my life. There was nothing like it that I had previously before then. Since then, though, I've had a number of amazing experiences, and my friends who do this work as well have found so much benefit from it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you really found great benefit from it. I'd love it if you could comment on perhaps this story, or also your own story. I want to hear if anyone of you has had the same kind of experience in releasing your emotions and letting go, and what happened to you. Did your mind become quiet? Did you heal a physical illness or disease, or did your perspective change? Did you reconnect with your parents? Did you reconnect with your wife? I'd love to hear, because the more people that share these kind of stories, the more this stuff can go out there. So thanks very much. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.